Welcome, Spiritual Reality. I'm your host, Hiram Kirkendall, the Reality Therapist. Today, we'll be discussing abortion and what does the Bible really say about abortion. If you were to comb through the Bible, it is not mentioned anywhere. So those who are using abortion, as part of their religious belief, saying they don't believe in it because of, it's in the Bible, it's because of their religious belief, they're not being honest. I challenge anyone who is a person of faith to find the chapter and verse where the Bible speaks about abortion. Now, of course, they're going to come back and say, well, it says the Bible says thou shalt not kill. That opens a whole nother can of worms as far as killing, okay? These same people are for the death penalty. They've supported wars that killed 1 million people in the case of the Iraq and Afghanistan war. Okay, they don't have a problem with police killing innocent people. So these are not people who are pro-life, okay? They may be pro-birth, but they're not necessarily pro-life. So you can't use the thou shalt not kill line. If you read the Bible, okay, as I have, obviously, as the spiritual reality therapist, okay, there are over 600 laws in the Bible. So anything that God wanted to address, he addressed it. Now, you're going to have people say, well, abortion, well, you couldn't do it back then. Yes, you could. Before abortion was made legal, people were having abortions with coat hangers in back alleys. That technology existed 4,000 or 5,000 years ago when the Bible was originally written, in the Old Testament at least. Okay? So the ability to perform an abortion has existed for thousands of years. Yet for some reason, God himself never addressed it when he handed down all these laws. Okay? So why is that? That's a question that a lot of people are going to be asking, but he never addressed it. Okay? That's number one. So we've established that those who claim that they're pro-life are not really pro-life because they're for the death penalty. They're for unnecessary wars. Okay? Therefore, they don't have a problem with police killing people on the street. Right? So they're not really pro-life. Now then when they turn around and say they are pro-child, they're for children. Well, not necessarily true either. Okay, because once these children are born, or in fact, in some cases, even while the mother is carrying the child, they don't have anything available to help make the life of the child better. Okay, if you go to most pro-life states, so to speak, their school system is grossly underfunded. Okay, these are the same states who denied the Obamacare Medicare expansion. Right? In fact, you will be hard-pressed to find any sort of program or anything that these so-called pro-child individuals have to help out the mother when she has the baby. So, as we established that these people don't really care about children, they're certainly not pro-life, then why are they so concerned with whether or not women are having babies? What's the reality of this? Now, at the same time, these are the same people who have criticized African American women for having babies out of wedlock. You're going to hear things like, oh, well, they have 70% of their babies out of wedlock. And that's probably true. And then at the same time, they're going to say that Planned Parenthood sets up all their abortion clinics in the black community to kill off black babies. And then they're going to tell you that millions of black babies have been aborted over these years. Well, anyone who's been around black women, how many black women over the age of 25 do you know that don't have children? Right? That's just it's not numerically possible. and for that all these black women are aborting their babies when they when they have all these children. Okay, so we know that they don't really care too much about children. They don't really care too much about life. What is driving the pro-life movement, or I should say the so-called pro-life movement? It's not biblical because it was never addressed. If you look anywhere in the Bible, I challenge anyone anywhere in the Bible to find anywhere where God talked about abortion or talked about forcefully removing a child from the womb. Doesn't talk about it. It's not brought up. He never mentions it. So anybody who's trying to use faith as a reason for their pro-life stance is just lying. Now, being pro-life in itself is not an evil thing. It's not a bad thing. I'm personally against abortion. Now, here's the problem. You have two things that are both barbaric. Obviously, to rip a child out of a mother's womb is an act of barbarism. I don't think anybody will dispute that. But also to force a woman to go through with a birth that she may not be physically equipped to do, may not be emotionally equipped to do, or may not just want to do, is also an act of barbarism. So you have these two acts here, both of which are relatively barbaric. Now, the problem arises if society makes the choice, then society is responsible for the consequences of the choice. Let's say, for example, you have a woman, she's 40 years old, she gets pregnant, she already has 3 kids, she really doesn't want another kid, but she lives in one of those states where you don't have a choice, right? Let's say Roe v. Wade is overturned. She lives in one of these states, you don't have a choice but to, go through with the birth. Even though you're 40, even though you already got 3 kids, even though your life is set, the state says, no, you got to have this baby. Fine. She goes out, she has the baby, and she dies during childbirth. Solely because the state was forcing her to have a baby that she really didn't want at that time. She really didn't need. She already had 3 kids, right? And she had a family. Now, the woman's death is based solely on the actions of the state. The only reason why she was having that baby is because the state was forcing her to. Okay? What happens to the family? What happens to the kids? Right? What happens to the husband? Okay? Now, he has a child here that can only remind him that child he really didn't want, that it can only remind him that his wife is dead because of this child. Right? So what happens to the other kids? All the other kids are looking at this kid like, you killed my mother, right? The only reason why, my mother's here, she had to have you, and now she's gone. So these kids are now stuck growing up without a mother because right-wingers thought it would be a good idea. Who compensates this family for the loss of that mother? Who does that? Nobody. So this is the reason why when society makes the choice, then society has to bear the consequences. Now, on the other hand, let's say the woman makes the choice. The woman, let's say she's a pro-life woman. And she basically says, hey, you know what? I'm pro-life. I don't believe in abortion. I know I'm 40. I already got 3 kids. But you know what? I'm going through with this birth anyway. Right? I'm going to go through with it because I am pro-life. I don't believe in abortion. I want to have my child. Fine. That's great. Nobody has a problem with it. I certainly don't have a problem with it. As I've often said before, since I am personally against abortion, I will never have one. That much I guarantee to everybody. Now, let's say she goes through with the birth and the outcome is the same. She dies. Now, in this particular case, the only people who bears the consequences of her action is her and her family because it was their choice, right? That is what the entire argument is about. Nobody is pro-abortion. Nobody wants to see an abortion, right? But the point is that whose choice should it be, right? Should it be the choice of the government, or should it be the choice of the family? The government represents society. So when society forces a choice on people, then that means society must bear the consequences of the choice. You can't have it. You can't have it any other way. You can't say, "Well, you went out and irresponsibly had that baby." No, I didn't. You forced me to have that baby. Now, the alternative is now where you want to control people's sexual behavior, right? Now, when you look at conservatives, they don't believe in life. I mean they just don't. Just based on everything that they believe in and vote for and that they've done. They really don't believe in life. They don't believe in helping children. So why is it that they are so interested in having these women have babies? Well, one thing conservatives do believe in, they do believe in heterosexual marriage, right? They do believe in that. But it's a lot of other things that they don't believe in. They don't believe in women making equal pay. They don't believe in unions. All the things that would help make the life of a child a little bit better if she was born by a single mother. Why? Because they don't think that the woman should be single and have children. And that may be right. That's a different debate or a different discussion as far as being married and having children. But the real issue is this. This is what an ideal conservative woman is. A woman who is married, submissive to her husband, and essentially trapped in a relationship whether she wants to be in that relationship or not. That is the primary role that conservatives want women to be in. They really want to bring women back to the 1950s. Now, if you go back to the 1980s, Ronald Reagan came in and he used the term welfare queen. Many people in the African American community were very upset because they felt like he was talking about black women. But the knock in the 1980s and really in the 1990s that women were having extra babies just so they can collect a welfare check. Okay, that was the knock. Okay, and also the knock of conservatives, particularly on black women, is that the welfare state, kind of destroyed the black family. Now, I challenge any conservative or anyone to find one black woman who turned down a marriage proposal from a high-quality man who was responsible and ready to be a husband in favor of a welfare check. So the question is, how did we go from conservatives complaining that, these women, particularly black women, were having too many babies, to now complaining that, Planned Parenthood is setting up all these abortion clinics in black communities and nobody's having babies anymore? How do we go from that? Well, the part of it is because of the economic structure changed. One of the things that men have always had an advantage of is being a provider and protector. That's kind of the role that it's usually in the DNA of a man. Now, what happened was when feminism came along and a lot of the social programs came along and women got into the workforce and they were able to earn their own money, they no longer needed a man for providing and protecting. They can do that for themselves. So what happened? Well, women start choosing men based on things other than their ability to provide. Well, capitalism, is the only tool available that allows men who are otherwise undesirable to get into conversations or to get to meet women that they otherwise would never have a chance with. Think about it. Just as socialism is a tool to whereas women no longer need to be bothered with these men that they otherwise would never have a relationship with. So think about men in this Me Too movement. Men like your Harvey Weinsteins, Roger Ailes, and a lot of these old ancient men out here who were able to harass these women. If not for capitalism, okay, if not for them being in positions of power, right, and having money and that sort of thing, and women needing something from them, these are men who would have never even been in proximity with the women they were able to harass. Okay, so this is a very disturbing thing to a lot of men, particularly men who are undesirable, right? Because now, hey, I can't trap this woman at home with babies anymore, right? She can go out and work and earn her own money. And then on top of that, now, even if she gets pregnant, she doesn't even have to keep the baby. She doesn't even have to hold on to the baby. Well, for a certain group of men, a certain type of men, that is absolutely horrifying. Because the only way that certain men are ever going to be able to hold on to women is through being able to oppress and control them. These are very insecure men. Think about the Muslim world and how they totally oppress and control their women. That's largely due to the fact that they are insecure. If you cannot depend on a woman to choose you on your own merit, to choose you because you got it going on, choose you because you're the man, because you can handle things sexually, because you can handle things, period, in general. If you can't depend on her to choose you based off that, she has to choose you because you have a lot of money. She has to choose you because some way she can get something out of you, or she can do something. You can do something for her. Then she's not really choosing you. What happens then when your ability to do something for her no longer exists, or the thing that you were doing for her that she was getting with you for that you can do for her, she can now do for herself? Well, now you become useless, and that is essentially what has happened to the conservative male. They have become emasculated. They have become useless, right, to a lot of the women. So how do they become useful again? Well, we force them to have babies, right? Because even the most successful woman working doesn't want to raise a baby 100% on her own. You still need help with that baby. That's just a fact of life. A single parenting is one of the biggest causes of poverty. But again, that's another conversation. So even though, she gets pregnant, she can get rid of the pregnancy if she doesn't want it. But now they want to be able to force her to have that baby, because having a baby as a single parent is a form of oppression. It's a form of control, because now your life is limited. It's limited rather than not. You're a single woman. If you're a single woman with a baby, your life is really limited. Because now you got to worry about childcare. You have to worry about, just all kinds of things that you have to do on your own as a single parent. Whereas if you're married, it does make parenting easier. But what if you're forced into a marriage by someone that you had a fling with him? You really didn't want to marry this guy, but you end up marrying him anyway because now, okay, you want to make sure the kid has a father, but this is not a person you want to be with for the rest of your life. Like, this is not a person that you can really stand. And so now you're trapped in this miserable, ungodly, ridiculous relationship, right? All based on government policy. Because conservative men decided that you need to have a baby, whether you want it or not. Now, what's the next step? Let's say they overturned Roe v. Wade. There's nothing from preventing government from making it, state governments at least, from making it illegal to have a baby out of wedlock. There's nothing that prevents them from doing that. Right? They can come back and say, oh, well, if you have a baby and you're not married, you either have to get married in 90 days or you're going to be in violation of the law or something. There's nothing that would stop them from coming out and doing that. Okay, they can certainly and they'll certainly try, right? So, and again, this is not a railing against marriage. Marriage is great if it's between two responsible people that can make it work. But marriage, like birth, like most things in life, in order for it to be successful, it must be a choice. Just like your faith, you can't force faith on someone. Right? And that's kind of like what the Christian right tries to do. They want to force faith on people, but you really can't do that. Right? Because if it's forced, then it's not real. Right? And as a theologian, as a counselor, as a therapist, I can tell you, God does not want forced faith. He wants you to choose him. He wants you to make a choice. He wants you to make the right choice. And so we can't really live in a world for which you have a group of people who are not affected by the choices, and that's the difference between the government or these old conservative men trying to make birth choices or marital choices or whatever choices they're trying to make for people, and people making those choices. Ultimately, those men are not going to bear any consequences of those choices. Right? In other words, a woman brings a child into the world, and the child is miserable. They go through all kinds of crap and all these different things. They doom the woman to poverty. All these different types of things that can come about by having a forced birth. The men who wrote the laws are not going to have to personally bear the consequences. Now, society may have to bear the consequences, okay, with being a higher crime rate, doling out more welfare benefits, or overwhelmed school system and stuff like that. Society will have to bear some consequences for these types of things. But the people who actually pass the laws, these people are not going to be bearing any consequences at all. And so that's something that we have to start understanding as a society. Anytime you get to make a decision, a choice, and not bear the consequences of that choice, good or bad, right? Then you're gonna become abusive in your authority. Okay? We don't get to make any choice we want in our personal lives, largely because because choices have consequences. When you make a personal choice, there's going to be a consequence at some point. If you decide to become a single parent, yes, there's a consequence to that. Okay, and it's usually poverty. But if you decide to get married to somebody you really don't want to be married to because you're pregnant, once again, there's a consequence to that too, right? Every choice we make as individuals will bear some kind of consequence, and we're the ones who have to bear the consequence. So ultimately, the choice should be ours. If I have to bear the consequences of my choices, then I want the choices to be mine. Okay. So in this case in Alabama, and this is, where this podcast, was derived from, you have 25 old white men, okay, making a decision. And this is not just the case in Alabama. If it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, you have 9 unelected officials that would be making a decision about somebody else's life for which they bear no consequences whatsoever for that decision. Now, anytime you're making a decision about something and you don't bear the consequences, as we just said, you tend to become abusive because you don't have to deal with it. You really don't have to deal with it. And so how do we change that? Right? And even if society has to deal with it, it's sort of like police that are out there killing people on the street or committing excessive force and all types of violence and stuff like that. They don't bear the consequences of that. The taxpayers do. Right? So yeah, the city gets sued, the taxpayer have to pay a few $1 million. The police goes on with his job and collects his pension. He's not bearing the consequences of that. The politicians who refuse to make change, they don't bear the consequences of it. Taxpayers do. When states get sued, or when counties get sued, when cities get sued, it's the taxpayers on the hook. It's not the people making the policies and the decisions. So this is why, when it comes to personal choices and behavior, it has to be left up to the individual, whether you agree with abortion or not. I personally don't agree with it. Right, I do find it to be barbaric to rip a child out of your womb. I don't know how anybody could do that in good conscience. At least a healthy child. I can understand if the child is hopelessly deformed or going to die anyway, or the woman's going to die, or it's a rape baby or incest. I can make some exceptions, because I do understand that there's going to be times where things happen and they shouldn't have happened, and someone ends up pregnant. That much I get, I understand, and we really have to make exceptions for those situations. However, for the most part, just abortion on convenience, that's something I really don't agree with. I don't agree with it if the baby's viable outside of the mother's womb. And that's another thing that doesn't really get addressed by the right. Okay, you said you want to give a right to the fetus. Okay, I understand that. However, is it another person's? Can you legally mandate that another person use their body to keep another person alive? Because when you say stuff like, well, life begins at conception, or you have these ridiculous heartbeat bills, what you're saying is that you, as a woman, are being mandated by law to use your body to keep another human being alive. Well, there's nothing in the law or the Constitution that allows you to make that decision, that allows the government to do that. There's nothing that allows you to do that. This is why abortion is not killing. That's something completely separate. Murder is when you take the life of a human being that is perfectly capable of existing on their own. They don't need another human being to survive. Okay, that's murder. When you kill somebody that's completely existing. In other words, let's flip it around. Let's say you're on the street, right, and some guy needs your body in order to live, right? If he doesn't have your fluids or your nutrients in order to live, he dies. So you decide, no, I'm going to cut myself loose from you, man. I don't I don't want you to take. I don't really want to sacrifice my body. I don't really want to give up my body so that you can live. That's not really murder. Now, I know that's breaking it down, and it sounds very cold, but ultimately, that's really the issue. If the woman does not value the child and doesn't want the child, is it even legal? Is it constitutional? Is it even possible for her to say, well, look, you still got to give up your body, and you still got to, make yourself available to let someone else live off of you, right, so that they can stay alive? Is that even legal? Can you even possibly do that? Is that constitutional at all? Right? So that's another question, because one side is only talking about the side they believe in. Well, it's a baby, and we should, and you're killing a baby. That's not entirely accurate. Now, if you give birth to the baby, right, the baby is born, the baby is viable, right, the baby can exist outside of your body, and then you decide to whack the baby after that. Well, yeah, that's murder, right? Because now you're killing a human being that's able to fully function without the use of your body. But as long as the child needs the use of the mother's body to function, no, it is not murder. You cannot call it murder. If somebody decides, hey, you know what, I just don't want to use my body as a host to bring another human being to life, or allow another human being to live, or a fetus to live, or whatever, that's not murder. And calling it murder is disingenuous and is being intellectually dishonest. Now, once again, from a spiritual perspective, I'm challenging everybody with your comments, with your views. Find the verse in the Bible where God specifically addressed abortion. When did he say abortion was wrong? What did he say about it? You know, find it. When did he address it at all? Now again, we're gonna get people like, well, obviously it's bad news. Just because you attribute something to the Word of God does not mean it is part of the Word of God. People make stuff up all the time. Okay, and as far as the abortion argument, most of it's made up. I can understand why people are against it. As I've said before, I'm personally against it. But since I'm against it, then I won't have one. Okay, I'm against a lot of things. Okay, I don't eat sugar. Okay, I think sugar's bad for you, but I don't try to stop other people from eating sugar. Okay, so that's the way you have to address the issue. It's never about whether or not it's right or wrong. In my view, yeah, I think it's kind of barbaric. I've said that before. I think it's wrong, but I'm not going to take care of the babies. Okay, I'm not gonna take care of some woman's baby that I don't even know. Right? I'm not going to bear the consequences of this person's decision. Right? If this person decides to go out and abort their baby, they have to live with that. Not me. That's them. That's something they have to live with. If they go out and decide to have a baby and are not prepared to do so, they have to live with that. Right? That they should be bearing the consequences of their choices. And that's the issue. We should all bear the consequences of our own choices. Not not have to be forced into a choice by someone who bears no consequence after their choice is made. All right. So in essence, there's no way you can have a situation where we're forcing women to have babies that they either cannot or do not want to have, and be a civilized society at the same time. This is Hiram Kirkendall signing off. I am the Reality Spiritual Therapist. Thank you for listening. And please click like if you like the show. Right? And also check out my book, Spiritual Reality, How to Become the Best Version of Yourself, right, through spiritual therapy. Thank you.